Welcome to the class on hiring right the first time. We are going to look at hiring either your first team member or your next team member, depending on where you are. So if you're watching this, you are joining either because you have never hired before and you would like to hire, or you know that this is something that is on the horizon, like it's coming, you know that eventually you want to start building a team, or even if it's not necessarily like a full-time team, right? So whenever we talk about team in general, just know that having systems or automations in your business can be seen as you have a team helping you, right? It's just not real people. It's like automations. But it can also be outsourcing things to freelancers or hiring someone for, contract work. So it's not necessarily a full-time employee, but you're either in the camp where you have never hired before, but you know it's coming, or you're looking into the future and you know that at some point you're going to want to hire, or you have hired before, but you are scared to hire again because that experience wasn't as fun or as pleasant as you would have hoped it to be. And maybe maybe even you hired before and it wasn't necessarily the best experience, but that person is still on the team and things are clocking, working quite well, but you know that you are going to have to bring in more people. And I do think that it's important to note that hiring your first team member is one thing, and that is a milestone in itself. But hiring the second, third, fourth, fifth, that does get a little bit more complicated because now you have gone from, being only you inside of the business to having multiple people and now having to wear the hat of managing those people, right? So you're in the right place if you're falling into either of these camps. And we're going to talk about exactly what you need to do to make sure that you are hiring effectively, that you're hiring the right people for the right roles inside of your business, and that you, in essence, save yourself a lot of time, money, energy, frustration, overwhelm, all the things that comes with building a team, that you save yourself from that. I do believe that most of us don't think about hiring in the way that I'm going to teach it to you today. So hopefully you walk away here with some new insights and a different way of thinking about hiring and building your team in general. So if you're new to me, my name is Ilonka Ras. I am a strategic intervention coach. I'm also a Clockwork certified partner, which just basically means that I love understanding why people do what they do. I love all of the mindset and self-development things that come with building your business. And I'm also obsessed with making things organized, streamlined on the back end of your business so that you actually have more free time available as the owner of the business. I have also hired, fired, retrenched many people over my career and as a business owner, and I've managed a team of over 20 people for over a decade. So I do think that I'm well versed in what it means to bring people onto a team, the challenges, the struggles that we have as business owners, not just from the business owner's perspective, but also from the team's perspective, and understanding, all the hardships that come with that and putting that new hat on where you are now managing people. I do know that from experience and working with my clients, this piece of the business, managing the people, dealing with the people, is probably one of the hardest things that you can do. And it's one of the things that trip us up the most because there's so much that you can't control when it comes to managing people. And it's often the thing that causes the most frustration when it comes to running your business. So we're going to look at all of that today. So there is a challenge when it comes to hiring, depending on where you sit in either of these camps. You've either not hired before or you have, and it was a little bit of a mess. So when we haven't hired, and maybe even if you have hired and you need to make your next hire, you might be facing this question of, I'm not exactly sure who I need to hire. I'm not exactly sure who needs to come into my business, and I'm not sure if I can afford them. There is a lot of pressure that now you are responsible for this person's salary every month, and it's stressful because you are now responsible for this person's livelihood, and you need to make sure that the money is actually there to pay them consistently. You might not be sure how to actually measure what they are doing and whether that is actually impactful to the business. So often we hire people because we think that that's what we need, right? So we need the admin assistant, we need the bookkeeper, or we need a social media manager, whatever it is. But we very rarely stop to question how we are going to know whether that is working, right? Whether that hire is actually contributing in the way that makes it worth it for us to actually have that expense in the business. It may have been just quite the mess where you hired the wrong person, maybe at the wrong time or just the wrong role in general. And what I see typically happens is we have people on the team, but we actually end up with more on our plate than we had before we had the hire, right? Before the team member joined. And so this puts you in a really sucky position because now you are doing a lot of additional work, and you have this person that you're now responsible for paying every month, and you aren't necessarily seeing that return. Like the math isn't mathing, as they say. Or you may have made a few mistakes, had a few bad experiences with hiring people, needing to let them go. Maybe you've even had a couple of stints with the CCMA, and you know that if you make the wrong mistake, or if you make a mistake, if you do the wrong thing, if you say the wrong thing, then it's going to cost you time and money, right? And so a lot of the time we avoid taking that next step because we're afraid of making those mistakes. So what do we try to do to solve this? What I typically see is that if we know we need to hire, but we're afraid to take that first step, there's just too much uncertainty. We're not sure who to hire, how much we should pay them. Like all of these questions that we have, we sort of just avoid that situation altogether. And we focus just on like being more productive, right? So we do everything we can to be more productive, be more efficient. What I've also seen is many owners actually just increase the amount of time that they actually work in the business. So they want to take on more work, they want to grow, but then they don't hire. Like they're actually ready to hire someone, but they don't. And as a result, they just simply increase their work hours, right? And so the problem with this is obviously you're like overworking yourself. One of my clients was working well over 80-hour work weeks, and she was just flooded with client work. And so it's clear when it's time to hire, but if you're stopping yourself from doing that, you'll do different things to try and see if you can actually get more work done, right? The other thing that we do is if we have hired and we are, we've maybe not hired the right person for the role, or, things just aren't going well. Like we're struggling with this person on the team. They're not necessarily pulling their weight in the way that we thought that they were going to do. Then we start micromanaging them, right? And this is a very frustrating place to be, actually. I think a lot of people look at, especially if you're looking from the employee perspective, you look at the person managing you, the boss inside of the business, right? And you may feel like, oh, they're micromanaging me. But, and we can often like explain that as, oh, this person is just super controlling. And this is true in some cases, right? Sometimes we are a little bit controlling and we just haven't learned the skill of letting go of the control. But most often what I see when business owners don't want to give away control, it's because they actually don't trust the team member. They actually don't trust that the thing that needs to happen will happen according to the standard and the quality that they want that to happen, right? So it's really a trust issue more than a control issue in my experience. Then what we do is we typically either fire them, let them go, or we keep them, but we slowly start taking things back onto our plates, because it's actually so frustrating and time consuming to teach someone the right way. It's often faster just to do it ourselves, and then we end up with the work. And this is exactly what puts you in that position where you have a team member, but you have more work than you had before, because now you're doing the additional work that you took on, as well as some of the work that the team member was actually supposed to do. And you're also like managing this person, right? So it's a very, very frustrating place to be. I also just want to say that if you do have any questions as we go through the content, you are welcome to drop it in the chat, and I will look at it every so often and answer those as we go as well. Okay, so the reason why this approach of like trying to be more productive, micromanaging, taking things back onto our plate, this is not the best way of trying to solve the problem, which is in essence that you need a team member, right? You need someone to start helping you inside of your business. When we are overworking, when we're increasing our work hours, trying to be more productive, fitting more things in less time, right? It causes burnout, right? It puts us in a situation where we are setting ourselves up for burnout. And when we are in this place where we're burnt out, we're overwhelmed, we're super frustrated, we typically make decisions from a place of urgency, from a place of desperation and exhaustion, right? And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but when emotions are high, intelligence is low, right? So we typically don't make really good decisions when we are at this place of burnout and frustration and overwhelm. And so you may feel like, okay, I just need to work faster. I just need to manage my time better. And in many cases, this is the truth, right? Sometimes I tell my clients that it's actually not time for you to hire just yet, because you actually need to leverage the time that you have in a better way and actually just shuffle things in your schedule a little bit so that you actually get to the things that are important, because often we spend so much time on things that don't really move the needle inside of the business. But you definitely don't want to hire from a place of, I'm so full and so busy and so like overwhelmed with everything. And now you're in essence just looking for someone to come and save you inside of your business, right? That's going to create a situation where you hire someone out of urgency and desperation, and you hire the wrong person. And you put all of this pressure now on this person to come and save you, right? And it's not a great way to start this relationship, right? Secondly, also, when we hire from a place of desperation, urgency, when we micromanage, we typically don't look at the data. We don't look at what is actually happening inside of the business and using that information to inform us when we hire team members, when we bring people onto the team. And this is not just something that I see when it comes to like hiring, building team. In general, very few business owners actually look at the numbers inside of their business. We're often very much in touch with like the financial side of things. And typically when I say, do you know your numbers? People will think of the financial side of it. But there are other metrics that you want to be looking at as you like grow and build your business. And if you're not, you're missing out on a lot of important information that can actually help you drive decisions, to help you make better decisions, faster decisions from a place of confidence, right? So I want to introduce a completely new way of thinking about hiring. And that is to stop hiring to take on more work and to hire to free up your time instead. Now I'm going to like pause a little bit on this specific statement because it might take some time to actually just take it in. We typically hire because we think that we need more hands on deck, right? We need more people helping so that we can grow, so that we can take on more work. And that is actually just a benefit of hiring, right? But it shouldn't be the main reason why you hire. And so I'm going to make a case for this if you feel like that's not, I don't agree with that, right? So what typically happens is business owners, we start the business and we are very much in the lifestyle business, right? So we are starting a business maybe because we have worked in corporate before doing what we're doing inside of our business now. So maybe you were an accountant or a lawyer, or whatever your profession was, right? And then you have the idea that you want to start your own business. And so you start your own accounting practice or your own law firm, whatever it is. And now we're in the business of owning a business, right? But the problem is most business owners start the business, but they're also the operator inside of the business, right? So they're doing all of the work inside of the business. Not that this is wrong per se, right? It's just a different way of starting the business. If you think of, for example, in Silicon Valley, when people start a business, they already have a team of people. The entrepreneur is not involved in the day-to-day, right? They're purely a shareholder in the business. And the main aim is like profit and growth, right? Or shareholder value. But when you look at a lifestyle business, many people say that you're self-employed, right? And I think there is some bad connotation to that as well. Like it doesn't always, sometimes it's like used as an insult more than anything else. But in essence, you own the business, yes, but you're also an employee inside of the business because you're working inside of the business, right? Now, what I see is that as business owners who are self-employed, who own lifestyle businesses, who own this business because they wanted to give themselves or create a opportunity for themselves to have more time freedom, more money freedom, make a bigger impact. So many reasons why we start lifestyle businesses. But we forget that we're also the owner of the business. And we're not just the person doing the work, the professional, we're also the shareholder. And if you're always working in the business and you never ever consider that you're also the shareholder, also the business owner, we tend to make mistakes. We tend to run our business in a way that into the future, when we look back, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm always working. I'm always like busy, always available to my clients. I don't actually have the time or the money freedom that I started this thing for, right? And so the way we shift that is by approaching hiring through this lens where we hire to free up time in your calendar and not just to increase capacity for more work inside of the business, which means that every person you bring onto your team needs to free up hours in your schedule. Why? Because you're probably doing and spending a lot of time on things that don't actually move the needle in the business, that don't actually grow the business. There are a lot of stuff that we do as business owners that are important. It's not that it shouldn't be happening, but it's just not those direct revenue generating activities, right? When you start freeing up time in your schedule by hiring team members, you are in essence opening yourself up so that you can do more of the revenue generating activities, do the higher leverage work, the higher impact work that actually grows the business so much faster, right? So that is why we want to look at it from this perspective rather than just increasing capacity so that we can take on more clients. You don't want to be in a position where you're taking on more clients and now you have a team member, but your calendar is still just as full and you never actually get to the working on the business activities, the things that actually move the business forward in a strategic, visionary way. You just never get to that, right? Because you're so stuck in the day-to-day of things. I see there are some questions or things in the chat. Oh, signal is a little bit bad. Yeah, that's okay. So let me do this. I'll switch off my Wi-Fi and be on the hard line. That should make it better. So I promised you that on this webinar, we are going to look at the 3 things that you need to do to make sure that you hire the right person, that you have the right person in the right role, and that you are able to tell whether this person is actually contributing in a meaningful way, yes or no. Okay? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to actually do what I call a time audit. This is where you track your time for 3 to 5 days so that you can actually see where is your time really going, right? We so often, I see this every time I ask my clients to track their time. They will tell me, oh, I think I spend about, 3 hours on this and 5 hours on that a week. And then when we track it, what they thought they were spending is completely skewed. Like it's not at all what's actually happening in reality. There are so many things that pop up during the day, especially if you're like a solo business owner, but regardless, even if you have a team, there's so many things that pop up that take your time, that distract you from the things that you're busy with. And we don't think of all of those things. We don't remember all of those things necessarily. So tracking your time is a very valuable exercise to do because it tells you exactly who you need in your business. It tells you exactly where the majority of your time is being spent and what activities or which activities you can delegate or transfer over to someone else. I will never, ever hire anyone or suggest my clients hire anyone unless they have tracked their time. There is so much valuable information that you can get from this exercise, not just who you need to hire, but that's obviously a discussion for another day. But the time tracking exercise not only tells you who you need, it also tells you at what capacity you need them. In other words, do I need to have a full-time employee? Do I actually have enough work for a full-time employee, right? Because you may think that when I need help, the only option available to me is a full-time employee. That is not true, right? And the worst thing that you can do is hire a full-time employee and then you need to create work for them. You need to find work for them. That is such a stressful place to be as a business owner. Definitely not what we want to do, right? So this is the first step. You need to track your time for 3 to 5 days. The longer you track it, the more information you will have, the more data you will get. But I also know that this is probably one of the most, like, I don't want to say tedious, but it's a harder thing to do because we're busy with other things, right? And then we forget, oh, I was supposed to track my time. I do actually have like a very cool tool that I give all of my clients that helps them to make this a little bit easier. But this is where you have to start. So before you think about hiring, don't make the mistake of going, oh, I think I need an admin assistant. And I'm just going to hire for admin. And I'm going to show you why this is not something you want to do, right? So I was playing around with AI with these images of my clients, which was very fun. It's the first time I created all of these images for the presentation on chat. So this is Karen, or the AI version of Karen. And she was exactly in this position. So she was fully booked. She had too many clients to actually deliver the quality of work that she wanted to. She was very much like at capacity, over capacity, actually. And so she felt like she needed an assistant, like that. Those were her exact words to me. I think I need to hire an assistant. And I said, wait a minute, let's track your time first and see what you actually need. And it's so interesting. So glad we did that exercise, because when we looked at the information, she was only spending about 2 hours a week in admin work. 2 hours a week. And she was working well over 80 hours a week, right? So 2 hours off of her plate is not going to make a big difference. She's going to sit with an admin assistant if she decided to hire an admin assistant. And she would have been so frustrated because this person would be sitting and I don't know, what's the word, like the expression, fiddling their fingers or thumbs or whatever it is, right? They would not have enough work for the salary that they were, in essence, going to be paid. What we did see was that the majority of her time was being spent in delivery on the accounting side of her business, where she's delivering accounting services to her clients. And so we needed to find someone that can take off some of the delivery activities. Now, in her situation, it was also very interesting because she felt like she's the accountant and no one else can do this work, right? They need to be an accountant in order for them to do this work. But when we actually investigated each of the activities that was on her plate, we found so many that was actually easy to delegate to someone. They didn't need an accounting degree. They didn't even need to understand accounting. And I know this is like a mind-blowing thing, right? But if they had the steps, if they knew exactly what to do step by step, anyone could do it. Anyone could do the work, right? There was only certain higher level activities that she was, in essence, if she didn't do it, she was making herself liable and exposing herself from a legal perspective, because she was, in essence, signing off on things. So there were certain things that, because she's the accountant, because she's the expert, only she could do those things, right? But 99% of what was on her plate could actually be transferred and delegated. So she hired a lady that was basically fresh out of school. She wanted to start studying accounting. So she is very much like excited about this work and passionate about the accounting profession. She hired her and she, in essence, started training her from the ground up. And it was a win for Karen because, firstly, it wasn't an expensive hire. So if you think about like hiring another accountant into your business, that is going to be expensive, right? Especially if it's a very experienced accountant. And there's pros and cons to both, right? But she had her person come in and she was training her. It was a win for Karen because of the expense that, she saved, in essence, in terms of salary. She also actually enjoyed the process of teaching someone, like almost being like a mentor to someone, right? And the person that she hired was also winning because she was getting firsthand experience, like real world experience in the thing that she wanted to go and study, which means by the time that she has her degree and she is a qualified accountant, she has so much experience, right? That's something that every other employer, if she did decide to find another job for whatever the reason is, that would be something that is very valuable, right? So that's something to consider. You don't necessarily need an admin person. Don't make the mistake of hiring just because someone told you that that's the first hire you make. You have to look at where your time is going first and hire based off of the data. The second thing you need to do is you need to ask yourself, now that I know who I need to hire, what is their most important job? I call this the primary role. In other words, this is the outcome that they are responsible for, right? This is why you hire them. This is the work that they are going to do. And if it's not clear what the primary role is, the number one thing that is the most important thing that they do, then what you end up with is you're both playing a game and you don't know the rules of the game. I always use the example, not that I know anything about rugby. I literally don't know anything about rugby. But I always use the example of if you were playing with your team on a rugby field against New Zealand or whoever, right? And you don't know the rules of the game. Like you don't know what side of the field you're on and who's doing what, who's responsible for what, where you're allowed to go, where not. It would be chaos, right? The other team would rip you to shreds because you don't know what the heck you're doing. The same is true if you don't know your team's primary roles and if they don't know those roles. This is super important. So for one of my clients, Sean, they are in landscaping business and they have a small team. They recently hired someone, brought them onto the team, and about a month or two into the new team member being onboarded, he was expressing his frustration with this person. He was like, I have this person now, but they're actually just like driving around, picking things up, dropping things off, and that's not why we got them. And I asked him, okay, so what is their primary role? And he was like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about the primary role. And it took us about 5 minutes to pin it down. But as soon as he knew what the primary role was, he could communicate that with the team member, and everyone was on the same page. Everyone knew exactly why this person is here, what they are responsible for, what they are doing. So there is no gray area. It's very clear to everyone. And this just creates so much calm inside of the business for everyone, but especially for you as the business owner, because you know this person knows exactly what they need to do. I know exactly what they need to do. I know what I'm paying them for, and they do too. Something that I always say is that, you know, when we think about being a business owner, bringing people onto our team, there is a lot of fear almost that we're bringing people in and they aren't going to be as passionate about our businesses as we are. They aren't going to work as hard. They're not going to be as committed. But I believe that most people are inherently good and they want to make a contribution. They want to make an impact. They want to do well. They want to feel like they are, you know, making progress and growing. And so it's not possible for the team to really run at their full potential if they don't know what they're doing or what they are responsible for. So very, very important step in the process. And then lastly, we need to know what are we actually measuring, right? So if we know who we need to hire, we know what they are responsible for. Now we need to ask, how do we know that that is happening, right? So we need success metrics. And we don't need 20. It doesn't need to be like a complicated spreadsheet, right? It's 1 to 3 metrics that will tell you and your team member, we're doing well. This is working. We're succeeding. We're making progress, right? Now, I do also want to mention that if you have a small team, it is very likely that your team member is going to have more than just one role. So they will still have their primary role, and this is the be-all, end-all. This is the thing that they are hired for. This is the thing that they will always do first and give their attention and energy to. But they might also have a secondary and a tertiary role because the team is small and one person can't just do one specific thing. If they do have secondary and tertiary roles, you need to have success metrics for those as well. For everything that your team member is responsible for, they need to know this is how we measure success. This is what we're tracking. This is what I'm reporting on, right? Because this tells us what success looks like. Now, this is very powerful because once you have all of these 3 things clicking together, right? You have the right people in the right roles. They understand what they're responsible for. They can see that there is growth opportunity for them inside of your business. And they know what success looks like, right? It creates a situation where you, the business owner, can actually step back because you can trust that this person that you have is capable, they are experienced, they have the skills, they have everything they need to do the things that you want them to do, probably better than you could do it yourself, right? Like this is what you end up with when you take the time to actually strategically and intentionally bring someone into your team versus just, oh, I'm desperate and I need help and we need it sooner rather than later. There is a reason why they say hire slow, fire fast, right? If you've ever heard that. So Vicky is a great example of having all of these things click into place. She was able to take 4 weeks off from her business and her team handled everything. She did not check in once. No phone calls, no messages, nothing. She was offline for 4 weeks. Very, very few people can do this. Like we typically go on vacation and we're just like carrying the business with us, right? So imagine the power of this, knowing that you have people that you can absolutely trust. You have their backs, they have your back, and everyone is working towards the same vision, towards the same goals, and everyone is equally committed, right? Like that is possible if you bring the right people onto your team at the right time in the right way. Let me see if there are any questions. No problem, Karin. There's also going to be a replay, so anything you missed, you can watch on the replay for sure. Okay, so if you've got any questions in terms of what we talked about, the time tracking, the primary roles, the success metrics, please let me know, and we can talk about that for sure. But I wanted to just quickly take a moment to tell you about my 12-month private coaching program called the Chief Freedom Officer. I love this. I'm a little bit obsessed with this name because I feel like this is exactly what I come into as when you work with me as your coach, right? Like I come in as the Chief Freedom Officer with the intention of getting you to a place where you actually have the time and the money freedom that you wanted when you started this thing in the first place, right? Now, we have in this webinar, in this class, we spoke about this little pillar or this piece of the process, building and managing your team. Now, we did only talk very lightly about the hiring component inside of this pillar, right? But there are other things that we would also work on together if you decided to coach with me. And that is how you delegate, like the processes, the systems, all the things that need to be in place for that team member to actually take on their role and really run with it at 100% versus sitting there hoping that someone's going to tell them what to do, right? So there's a lot more when it comes to managing and building your team. But what we spoke about today is really like the foundational things. This is where you and I would start if we were working together privately. But in the Chief Freedom Officer 12-month program, we also look at where your time is going, right? We look at how you spend your time as a business owner, the activities and the tasks and the things that are on your schedule. And we look for ways to optimize how you use your time so that you free up time in your schedule, yes, but you're also spending more and more of your time on those high impact, high energy activities that you love doing that really drive growth inside of the business. And that just that actually gives you energy, right? So that you're not like, oh my gosh, it's Monday. Like we're back at it, right? We're also going to look at your back-end organization. There are actually 4 very specific systems that every business needs to have. And I will help you to determine what those are for your specific business and help you so that we can get it set up so that the systems aren't like running in your head, but that they are actually well documented and captured so that when you do plug people in onto your team, that they can just start running, right? They can hit the ground running. And even if you don't hire a team right out of the gate, even if that isn't something that you necessarily want to do in the next 12 months, implementing these systems into your business is going to still free up time for you because there is so much stuff that's going to be happening almost on, I don't want to say autopilot because it doesn't necessarily always happen on autopilot, but it happens with less of your like effort and mental energy. The business isn't then in a situation where it requires you to be at your A game 24/7, right? The systems are doing the heavy lifting. Then, of course, we're going to dive deeper into building and managing your team if that makes sense for where you are in your business. We're also going to look at your profitability and how you manage the money inside of your business. And this is a big thing, something I'm very passionate about because so many business owners are like, let's just make more money. But there's no point in making more money, bringing in more revenue if you're not making profit. This is why you are in business, right? Is to earn a profit. And so we want to look at how we can make your business more profitable and manage the money that is flowing through the business really well and like a CEO would manage it, right? Like someone that is stewarding the money for the business would manage it. And then lastly, we'll also look at stress management because there are so many challenges and just like day-to-day decisions and things that you struggle with as a business owner. And with me as your coach, we would be looking at what all of those things are. We would be working through it and getting you to a place where you feel calmer inside of your business. There is less overwhelm, less stress, and you just have a plan, right? You know what you're working towards, and week by week, we are chipping away at that goal. So that is the Chief Freedom Officer program. It runs for 12 months, and it includes weekly private coaching with me directly. So if you are interested in working with me, I want to invite you to go to ilonkaras.com/consultation. The consultation call is a 60-minute call, and it's complimentary, it's free. And you will get on this call, and we are going to look at specifically where your business is, where you would like it to be over the next 12 months, what exactly needs to be in place, the systems, how you manage your time, all of the pillars that we just discussed. And we will implement that over the next 12 months and get you to where you want to be inside of your business. Okay, so that is it for today's class. Does anyone have any questions?